Well, if you look at the transformation of the world to a digital economy, and the digital economy is driving nations to prosperity, and all that is dependent on connectivity, and the fundamental backbone of all global connectivity are submarine cables. Well, yeah, wireless connectivity can bring broadband within a country, but to communicate globally, you need to cross or span the oceans, and that's where the fibre optic cables come. 10 years ago, the industry was just emerging from the dot-com boom and bust, where there'd been very little investment in the submarine cables between around 2003 and 2008. So we were just emerging as an industry from that boom and bust cycle. The involvement in terms of investment from the OTTs or the content players. So 2008 saw the first investment in submarine cables from Google, for example. Well, I think it's the rise of content and data and the need for the world to access data. So what we've seen in terms of the global network topology, typically before the development or the inclusion of Google and the Facebook as investors in submarine cables, we had a global network topology that was based on connecting population centres. And that has slowly transformed in the last 10 years to be a global network topology which is data centre centric, where data centre connectivity is the key driver in the investment cycle that we're going through. And what's causing that is the rise in machine-to-machine traffic. So in the last 5 years, machine-to-machine traffic has multiplied by 20 times. So if you look at the capacity or user dynamic across the Atlantic, for example, around 80% of traffic across the Atlantic is machine-to-machine traffic. So human beings are playing less of a role in the creation of data and in the use of capacity on submarine cables. Yeah, I think the biggest challenge there, which comes from that sort of investment and that sort of inclusion of these new players, is first of all, we're seeing less investment from the traditional telco players. For example, British Telecom, AT&T out of the US, or Deutsche Telekom out of Europe, who were very big investors in the sort of build up to 2000, 2003. As the content providers are now coming in and investing at the front end and getting their cost economics, the traditional telcos are not moving those players' traffic around. So we're seeing a lack of investment or an exit from the industry of the traditional telco players, particularly in Europe and the US. Within the Middle East and Asia, we're still seeing investment from the traditional telecoms. So it may only be a time lag between when they start to pull back in investment, such as the European and the US telcos have done. I don't see any radical change. I think this is becoming the norm and will be the norm for the next few years. If you look at the investment that's going into the industry, sort of pre-2008, at best, you were getting about 1.5 billion of investment at the height of that investment cycle. Now, if you look at global investment into this industry, on average, and in excess of $2.5 billion a year. So the investment is coming is increasing dramatically, and it is driven by the content players. So we're seeing the US content players as being key investors. I believe it's only a matter of time before we start to see other content players, people like Alibaba, people like Tencent. It's only a matter of time before they start to invest in submarine cables.